but
I got it. Pursuant to
Okay.
Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, subsection 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. The meeting of the Hubbardston Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at www.hubbardstonma.us. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
wow, well done. Okay. I'm going to call the planning board meeting to order tonight. We do have a quorum present. With us tonight, we have members Francois Steiger, John Demalia, Christopher Monroe, myself, Alice Livedall, the chair, and Erica Duck, our associate member. So we usually begin our meetings with allowing the public to comment on pretty much anything we do that they'd like to comment on or bring to our attention. Do we have any members of the public out there that want to say anything? Okay, if somebody comes in later, there's another chance at the end to speak. First item of on the agenda tonight is to approve the minutes of the December 17th, 2020 meeting, which is great. We're closing in on at least 2020, right? Has everybody had a chance to read them? Everybody's muted. There's Francois.
Yep, I have.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that is to accept the minutes as they have been presented. These are the minutes for December the 17th, 2020.
Is there a second?
This is John DeMaria. I will second that motion.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Are there any changes or corrections, additions that anybody wants in these minutes? I don't, hearing none, I'll accept a motion to, we've got the motion, it's been seconded. So let's vote. Livedall, aye.
Steiger, aye.
Monroe, aye.
DeMalia, aye.
Did everybody? Okay. I did have one comment for Mallory, and that is, I note in here, there's the North Quabbin Land Trust, and there's the 248 Gardner Road, neither one of which got followed up on.
Yeah, so the North Quabbin Valley Land Trust is going to be at our next meeting for the scenic road hearing.
Okay, that's for everybody else. That's scenic bylaw, or scenic ways application.
And I haven't heard anything else on 248.
Okay, well, just put as a note, and I'll try to.
Yeah, we'll follow up because we're gonna follow up with Roland on, so maybe we can follow up tonight with him.
Okay, we have the next two things are action items, and well, there's three things, but of the two, with Damon's is first on the agenda, but we have a speaker here tonight who has just a very short item. So if you could bear with me, Mr. Schmidt, I'll let, and we won't cover the whole item on the agenda. We'll just let John Furman go first. So to the members of the board and public, he's here we're studying an old gravel pit lot in Hubbardston for reuse for affordable housing. And the first step in that process was to do what's called a phase 1 environmental review, which is done. And tonight we may move on, also discuss it and move on to the next phase. But first, that was in the document list, and it was very, very long, very detailed. And then it had a conclusion, which is somewhat ambiguous whether we need to worry about it or we don't need to worry about it. So I actually asked them to come and just make their comments, somebody that worked on it, to let us know whether you think that there's enough concern that we shouldn't go on, or we need to do more testing, or whether you think it's reasonable for us to move on to the next phase. So having said that, John Furman is here. He's from VHB, the consultants that were doing the environmental work.
Alice, so thank you. Good evening. Good evening, members. I'm John Furman. I'm the Director of Land Development for the Springfield office of VHB. And with me tonight, who you should see on your screen, is Catherine Kudzma. She is a Director of our Site Remediation and Investigation Division. And I'm not going to do her report justice. I won't even try. So I know you have a full agenda. So Catherine has promised to be brief. And she'll give you a summary, and we can go to see where things go from there after she gets through talking about her report.
Okay, we're not going to talk about the follow-up until later because I promised this other item first. But if we can
Understood.
get you in, then you won't have to sit a whole hour waiting. So go ahead,
Very
Catherine.
good.
I didn't see you come up before, so go ahead. Tell us what we make of the old rifle range and the.
Sure. So we finished our phase 1 environmental site assessment, and just a reminder that the purpose of a phase 1 is to identify a suspected or likely release of oil and or hazardous materials on a property. We do that via site reconnaissance, records review, including municipal records, interviews, and review of historical sources such as maps and plans. And so ultimately, we reviewed all these documents, performed our site visit, and came up with what are called recognized environmental conditions, which are the conclusions that you were speaking of earlier. And so there are 2 recognized environmental conditions that we identified. One of them is the on-site shooting range used by the police department that's been there for at least the last 20 years. And that is a recognized environmental condition, and why it can, can constitute a potential release to the environment is that shooting ranges typically with the discarded ammunition historically contain lead. And so with shooting ranges, it's pretty frequent that there are lead impacts to the soils surrounding and within the shooting range due to that spent ammunition. So that's the first recognized environmental condition. And then the second is the on-site disposal of street sweeping debris. And that has been dumped on the property for, I believe, at least the last 7 years. It might have gone back even farther. There's also stockpiles of material out there that we could observe. And so the concern with street sweeping and the oil and hazardous materials potential with that is that street sweeping does typically contain heavy metals and other types of kind of low mobility contaminants associated with roadways. And it does need to be handled in accordance with Mass DEP policies, which is typically to send it off to a landfill for proper disposal. There are a few other ways to properly handle it, but the fact of the matter is that it could potentially contain oil and hazardous materials if it were tested. So that is why we put those as recognized environmental conditions. And when we have recognized environmental conditions, typically the next step is to recommend additional investigation. And in this case, it would be to test the street sweeping area as well as the shooting range area to determine whether the oil and hazardous materials is present and would be representing a reportable condition to Mass DEP that would require cleanup in accordance with the state regulations.
Okay, so I guess we want to do the right thing. If we need to do that, we need to do that. We only have enough money appropriated to either do the next phase probably or to do that. So I guess that's the question we're in. Doesn't mean we can't go back to the CPC and request additional funds. Do you feel strongly that this is something that should be done before we proceed to the base map? I want to call it, what do you call it? The due diligence study?
So phase 2 is the natural next step for a phase 1 that has recognized environmental conditions in order to address those and eliminate the concern or risk, environmental liability, if you will, associated with those potential issues. So, the concern, for instance, if you look at lead in soil, if you are to ultimately redevelop the property for residential use, you wouldn't want, children playing in the soil and it being potentially contaminated with lead at levels that could impact human health. And so that's really the goal of testing and figuring out what's there and remediating it if necessary, so that future users of the property, particularly residential, which is a very sensitive use. You don't have any risk there with regards to potential contamination.
So should our next step be to table for tonight the due diligence study and have you put together what the next phase would cost to do a study? I don't know. What does that involve?
Yeah.
Six,
Alice,
seven?
let me, if I could, let me weigh in on that.
Yeah.
I would look at it, I guess, one of two ways, is that you're going to be doing something with this property. The town owns it and it's been that way for a while and you don't want it to stay that way. So if you proceed right to due diligence and some concept planning, you're going to get a concept plan and you're going to figure out how you're going to proceed with developing that property. Then at some point, if there's a skeleton buried there, it's going to come at the worst possible time. It's right when you have a development plan and you're ready to go, you got to take a step back and take care of this. So from my perspective, letting Catherine and her team do their due diligence and get this thing understood a little bit more about what's in there. That way they can come up with a plan on how to address it. I would love to jump into a due diligence, but if there's an area that is contaminated and we might be able to leave it there, then that's going to affect what due diligence looks like. So personally, I think, and Catherine is certainly free to agree, disagree, but I think having her go to that next step is probably, in my mind, the best thing to do.
Okay, do you want to, anybody from the board is welcome to weigh in here. But my thinking is then we should table the due diligence study and let you put together what the next phase would cost. And submit something to us maybe in a week or two.
Sure, I
Catherine,
can.
would you be able to do that?
Okay,
Nods all around. Yep.
we will hold off on everything else, and it doesn't sound too bad to me, but I guess you don't know till you know, right? So, all right, well, we'll look forward to getting that estimate from you.
Great, we'll do that.
Thank
Well,
you guys.
Thank you all for your time. It was good seeing you, or at least the blank screens anyway. And we'll
I
talk
do
to you all later.
appreciate your coming and explaining.
Take care.
Thanks.
Good night.
Excellent. Good night. Okay. So actually so then B, which is lot 57, we'll postpone that. That's been decided. And we'll actually go to our first agenda item, which is Damon Smith. It's who is here with both a special permit and site plan application. The goal tonight is to determine those applications are complete. So we can do the kickoff, schedule the public hearing, get it advertised, and hear what the public has to say about it. And hopefully it'll go smoothly. So there's a couple of steps in doing that. I think I want to give Damon a chance to speak. He's here, right? There he is. I had a nice chance to speak with him and he asked a lot of questions at a roundtable discussion with other board chairs in town. So I have a really good idea of what he's doing, but you want to take a few minutes and walk us through it?
Yeah, I could just give just a brief overview if that's what you'd like.
Right, and we have circulated all of the forms, your plans, the parking plans, all of it. So they've read it, but it's also good to let the public know what we're doing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
give on the board a chance to ask questions. So take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. So here's just I guess a brief overview of our plan at 69 Gardner Road. So some things have changed since the last time I came in front of the planning board. If you remember, we were planning about a 6,000 to possibly 10,000, and it ended up being a 9,000 square foot dry cure facility that also would have acted as our veg or our beginning staging ground for the plants. So we have decided to try to not to do that, possibly temporarily or entirely, and instead have switched to using freezer trailers. So our outdoor grow operation, we are getting approval for a tier 6, which is 40,000 to 50,000 square feet of cannabis marijuana canopy that will be enclosed in a fence with actually a couple fences as part of one fence. And we will have what are called freezer or reefer trailers. Basically what you see on the highway, 53 feet long. We'll have a couple of them. And the new idea that we have is to replace the 9,000 square foot dry cure facility with the trailers, where we will have the harvest at the end of the harvest. Instead of hanging the marijuana product as usual to dry it, we'll basically harvest it and package it and freeze it. So basically flash freeze it in the reefer trailers, as they're called. No pun intended. And it's basically about it. It's kind of the overview of what we do. We should have the trailers, parked there from about May to October, maybe into November, really depends. Our security system is such that we have cameras, motion detectors, trip wires, all the good things. We have razor wire, barbed wire on our fence. It's actually a two-pronged fence. And we're closed to the public, so we'll have a gate down by the end of the driveway and pretty much out of public view. That's kind of an overview, but
Okay, so originally this started out with buildings and cure on premises, and you're not necessarily eliminating them forever, but this is phase one, right?
this is phase one. We're gonna see how it goes. It does cost us a considerable amount extra each year for testing, simply because we're testing wet product instead of dry product. But we think this could work for a couple of years. So we're not 100% sure yet which way we'll go.
So your actual area in which you're going to be growing, you also talked about growing hemp, but you're going to actually be growing the cannabis that's controlled by this bylaw is about, of this site, if the site's about 29 acres, is it?
It's 19 acres.
19 acres, I'm sorry. And you're going to be growing?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, we either can grow hemp or we're going to grow marijuana. We're not going to grow both.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So the DEA kind of frowns on growing both on the same property.
Okay, so the area enclosed by the fence on your diagram here is about 2.5 acres, is that right?
Yeah, it's about 100,000 square feet.
Okay, and so what he was explaining, and of course it's all written up here, if you've had a chance to read it in detail, to our roundtable meeting is sort of who are the abutters and what DCR had to say about it. DCR, remember, the reason this got kicked back was because there was some DCR buffer in this lot, but it's where the driveway is, correct? And all the rest of it's outside that zone. Am I right?
Yeah, one of the, I guess there's I guess they call it a pond or a tributary that we were within the 200 to 400 feet. So there's a 0 to 200, then a 200 to 400. So we had to get permission to put the driveway through the 200 to 400, which we did get.
Okay. Okay, so I want to open up to questions. I also want to open up to comments to Bill Murray, who's here. It's important tonight also to get his time frame, because this is very technical stuff and not something that lay people who serve on a board can do without a consultant. So I guess I want to direct questions to Bill. From your perspective, do you think that the application is complete enough to accept it tonight?
I think it's complete enough to accept. I do have some concerns.
Okay. To Damon, you understand that you have to pay the fees for him to give us advice. That's just the way it
Oh,
works.
yeah. Every town we go into, it's the same thing.
But our board also needs to, because the bill comes to us, right? Accept Bill's consulting fee. So
Yeah.
that was among your packages as well. So which I've read, and I think the board's probably had a chance to read. So are there any board questions about the scope of Bill's work or what he's planning to do for us? or the cost of that work? Hearing none, can I have a vote to accept our consultant's fee?
This is John D'Amelio. I'll make that motion to accept the consultant fee.
Is there a second?
Christopher Monroe, I second.
Okay, any discussion about that? Bill, you want to say anything about it? This would include his doing a draft decision for us as well. Once
Yeah,
we make that decision. He doesn't write
Yeah,
it, but
I saw that once I looked into that. That's good. That's good. So,
just so we get it right. All right, so in terms of accepting the fee, let's take a vote because it is something the town pays. Lived all I.
Hager, aye.
D'Amelio, aye.
Monroe, I.
Okay, so, and that fee is acceptable to Mr. Schmidt?
yep.
Okay, so are there questions that anybody, we're gonna have a chance to discuss this at length and have a presentation at length with the public present, but I think it's fair if there are questions that you have right now that you want him to address, or think something you'd like to know more about. From anybody, including Bill, before we accept it? Anybody else?
Well, from my perspective, I've been reaching out to state agencies because, excuse me, this is considered agricultural. And I want to know what is allowed agriculturally under zoning and site plan regulations and other environmental regulations and what isn't. And I've only heard back from one other agency. So I'm waiting for responses. I already have asked those questions of those agencies just to make sure we dot the I and cross the T.
Okay, and if you get responses, you'll pass them on to Mr. Schmidt right away, right? You won't,
I will.
can you? Okay. Okay, I guess I had one question for you, for Damon, and that is, so in the original proposal, there was growing hemp, which I learn all things all the time. Hemp is totally an agricultural product, but is also regulated, but not the same way. It doesn't have to have, it isn't covered by the specific marijuana bylaw we have. And then he also said he might grow Christmas trees. So I guess my question is, in this, how much of the, beyond the 2.34 acres do you plan to plant, and what do you plan, which is the outside of the fence area, and what do you plan to plant it with? If assuming you're able to get all the marijuana crop in you want inside the fence.
Yep. So we had the Massachusetts Agriculture came out last week. And that's when I learned that you can't grow hemp and cannabis marijuana at the same time on the same property. So that was just reason. Friday they came out for my license, and they said if you go marijuana, you go marijuana. If you go hemp, you go hemp. And that's he literally told me the DEA, doesn't want marijuana on the same property as hemp. So that throws out the hemp if you're growing marijuana. And those Christmas trees, we're not really doing that for commercial to cut them down. We were just planting a bunch of them because we had some areas. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful. Also, I guess one of the questions is with our, you're not planning to work in the front area? I'm
No.
just trying to figure if we need to think about buffers or not. It's quite set back.
Yes.
And
I'm sorry. So that front area, our property, if you notice all those posts, so that's my neighbor. So my neighbor has all those wood posts up. So that's actually going to be cows in there. So our front, that's the open field, is really just enough space for our driveway. And then you have that row of trees. So our open space, probably is about 25 feet in the beginning where the driveway is, and then it opens up a little bit. But we don't have any plans for that front area.
you're just going to leave it in its state it's in now, which
Yeah,
is,
there'll be a gate there. We have a gate from Tractor Supply, a farm gate we haven't put up yet, but
okay.
the
All right.
post.
Final question to my board. Do you want to have a tour of the site before the hearing? Because Mr. Schmidt's offered, and we have a right to do that if you want to see what he's planting.
Come on up. So we have the fence up, in the front part of the building, in the area. So, when you drive by, you can't see the fence. It's past the crossing. So if you ever want to see it, you're gonna have to come for a visit.
All right, well, I may come.
All
Damon,
right.
if you're
If
around.
you want to come this weekend, it's probably better to come before it turns into a mud pit.
This weekend, I may send you a note. And the rule on that for all the board members is you can even have the whole board go. We just can't deliberate.
Yeah, that's fine. You guys can come check it out, so.
Anybody
Well,
else is interested, shoot me an email and I will get in touch with you about a time. I just.
We got some visitors.
I would love to walk it with you.
Come on over.
Right.
Madam Chair, I would like to see it, but I won't be able to this weekend.
Okay, you want to reach him in another time?
Yeah, I'll connect by email.
Okay,
Cool.
anybody else? All right, and I'll circulate an email when I decide to go, and if somebody wants to come at the last minute, they can. Okay, so we need a vote to accept his, it's both site plan and special permit applications as being complete and ready to advertise and set for a hearing. So does someone want to make that motion? Everybody's,
Sorry, this is John D'Amelia. I'll make that motion.
okay. A second, please, from someone?
Christopher Monroe, second.
Okay. So we're voting on to accept the application and site plan reviews for a special permit and site plan review for the property at 61 Gardner Road as being complete and ready to schedule for hearings.
69 Gardner Road.
59. I'm sorry. I wrote it wrong on my agenda. All right, so everybody ready to vote? Lived all I.
Monroe, I.
D'Amelia, aye.
Geiger, aye.
Okay, and Mallory has been looking at timeframes.
Yeah, so this
When
hearing
will
is
our-
held April 1st.
April
Really?
Fool's. April 1st.
I'm not kidding.
And you can get everything out by then to the abutters you've got on the list?
Yeah.
It's not an extensive list of abutters, I know.
No.
It's
So
in there.
that will give us the 2 weeks posting in the Gardner News. and plenty
Okay,
Publicized.
This is John. I would not be available on that date.
Any
chance we could do like the week before, or?
No. I can't be ready the week before.
My only concern about having John not do this, I mean, this is, if, we might not vote to grant it anyway. The problem is, if we do need 4 votes instead of 3 votes. So it'd have to be unanimous, except that Erica could vote, could she not?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Erica, is everybody else available on the 1st? This is an important issue because we don't want to do it that day if we're not going to have a quorum. Anybody else could not be there? Erica's muted, so.
I can be there.
Okay, and Francois, going to be around on the 1st?
I should be.
Christopher, as far as you know?
Yes.
All right, I think maybe we should keep it as April 1st. Did any of you find you really can't do that? Will you let Mallory know as soon as you can? So I don't, and if it carries over, my understanding of this, and Bill can just correct me, but if we don't make a decision on the 1st because, it takes another session, I believe John can join back in as long as he listens to all the tape. Is that correct?
For one session only, he can't miss more than one.
One session. Okay, so we have a plan. All right.
Plus Bill Holman's may be there as
Oh,
well,
yeah, that's right. Bill isn't on this.
but he doesn't need to be because you haven't opened the public hearing. So you don't need to worry about that.
About tonight. But he
Yeah,
does
that-
need to be there the 1st.
Well, you got Erica, so you'll have a full board if you're missing one person.
Right, and the person's going to be John, so.
Yep.
All right, so will you check with Bill tomorrow, Mallory? Make sure
Yeah,
the
I'll
first.
shoot him an email tonight.
Okay, All right. Any other questions on this matter? Mr. Schmidt, are we okay?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
So on the first, you might want to have one of your consultants be on standby, but in case there's any questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
Bill, are you going to be around for the meeting on the 18th? If we do 56 for their 56 Gardner Road for them to present their application?
Let's see, that's our third meeting, our regular third weekend, right? Our third Tuesday,
Tuesday.
the 18th. I'm happy to do that. I know these guys are trying to get their crops in, so. Is everybody else going to be available on the 18th? That again won't be a hearing, it'll be accepting an application. Okay,
Yes,
So you
I'm
said
available.
you need a simple majority just for that.
yeah. So there will be a meeting on the 18th. And let us know if you can't make it. Anybody that's on the board. All right, that was actually further down on my agenda to ask that, believe, but that's good. Okay. So that completes that matter until we see you at the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, I told our next item, Mr. Loring, not to show up till 7:30 because I was sure that we'd be mired in the gravel pit discussion. So we're gonna skip over that and come back to him. So we're gonna go to D on the report, which is one of our obligations on the planning board is to prepare an annual report that goes into the book of annual reports for all the committees in town. And Mallory's written that, and I sort of edited it. And I want everybody else's, I can't find it. Wait a minute, it's here somewhere. Excuse me for a second. Yeah, annual report, yeah. So did everybody get a chance? There's no hard and fast format for this, but Christina and I last year decided that we should inform the town in part of the report what the planning board actually does, especially since we wear a lot of different hats. So that's why the first part of it lists all the different kinds of permits we grant and our different jurisdictions. And I think the next item that's on that report deals with what we brought up with the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, which is what to do about the rate of development bylaw, which is expiring. But just for everybody's edification, this year, 6 building permits were granted. And again, the permitted cap is 28. So I thought that was interesting. The A&R plans, I don't know, Mallory, if you have time, but these A&R plans, we did on some of them list map and lots, and on others we didn't. You want to look them up and fill it in if you have time. If not, it's not a fatal flaw. 4 scenic road applications, and then the only special permit we granted actually this year was 36 Gardner Road, which is a storage lockers facility. It talks about in the annual report the 3 affordable housing initiatives we're sort of working on, the habitat, the tax title lots, and the pit, which we were just talking about. A little bit on the master plan, a little bit about the new sign bylaw, which is going to be, which was written last year, so it's in this report, but it's going to be on the coming annual meeting. And then gravel permits. Does everybody think it's adequate? I want to add anything? Should we take a vote to approve the annual report?
Madam Chair, the only thing that I would add here is that I think members of this board also participate in other committees as part of town. I know they're not necessarily part of the planning board itself, but they are contributors. We are contributors towards these. As an example, the CIPC is certainly something that I participate in. I know that you have participated in others, and other groups, other members also do. I don't know if this is, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning, but it's actually, it's up to you.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. board member. What are the other ones we have? Francois, you're on, I'm on,
CIP
which is it?
The CIPC, capital improvement.
Yes, I just don't know the acronym. I knew it was capital improvements.
Yep.
Okay, I'm on the CPC.
Yep.
And are there other boards? Do we have liaisons too?
Economic Development Committee.
Is that you?
Yes, that's me.
Okay, that has a meeting coming up that I want to talk about. Yeah, so Mallory, just to add a note at the end that members of the board also participate as members of others committees. Put those three on it. Can
Does
you do
Bill do anything else?
I should know this as chair.
I can ask him in my email.
Isn't Bill on the Board of Health?
Not
No,
anymore.
it's not
Oh,
any
okay.
longer. I mean, we do have sort of liaisons supposedly to the select board and the board of health, but these others were actually committee members of.
He's
Right.
on the ZBA, but
He is? Oh, he is. ZBA?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so put that on too, yeah. Actually, that's a valuable addition to this report. So thanks, Francois. So if she does that, is everybody else satisfied? Maybe we don't need to vote on it. Is everybody satisfied with it? If we make those changes?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Good job, Mallory, for pulling all that data together and getting it done. It's very satisfying to read it. It means like, oh, we've done a lot this year, you know? That's good. Okay. So, we still got a ways to go. So let's go on to working on bylaws. I know you guys are. It's tough to revise bylaws. And we talked about 3 of them with the select board. We talked about this rate of growth, just extending it for a year because it expires. We talked about, actually 4 of them. We talked about dealing with possibly amending the in-law apartment, which I want to talk about. And then we dealt with solar and battery storage. Those are the things that and the sign bylaw. But the sign bylaw is, I think, set and ready to go. In fact, Mallory, do you want to make sure that makes it on the warrant?
Yes.
Yeah, take care of it. Okay, so let's do the growth rate bylaw. I reread it. And it does actually, my fear was that it has a limit, the way it's written. It's 38 units, but no more than 2 building permits to 1 builder in a year. So with that kind of limit, that's pretty severe. You're never going to get a subdivision. You're never going to get, so it concerns me. And that's why I wanted to just make it a year. I don't mind the 38, but it seems to me that you're never going to have any kind of clustered development with just 2 units being able to build in a year. And maybe maybe people were sick of it and that's what they were aiming at, but it seems very, very exclusionary to me. So, but when I did read it, there is an exception if 25% of the units in a proposed project are market rate and low income. So this wouldn't, if miracles had happened and we were able to get one of the tax title lots or the gravel pit cleaned up, it would not prevent us from moving forward with planning an affordable, sending out RFPs for affordable units or complexes where at least 25% of the units were affordable. So I just wanted to point that out. So I'll just draft that bylaw as a straight extension for 1 year, or that warrant article. On the in-law apartment issue, the way it presently reads is, it's in the definitions, it's 2.37, and it says a group of rooms in an owner-occupied single-family residence with its own kitchen and bathroom facilities used as a separate apartment for a limited number of people not to exceed 4. All that's fine. And then it says, related to the owner occupants, such as in-laws, elderly relatives, or grown children. So my thinking in reviewing these, because these bylaws are, when you go to affordable housing seminars, always pointed out, is that should be expanded, in my thinking would be to have it read, and I can send it out in writing to you, for a limited number of persons connected to the owner occupants, such as, and then in addition to the in-laws, the elderly relatives, grown children, include personal friends of the owners, and employees of the owners, such as caregivers, nannies, foster children, foster elderly. Some of those categories of people that often occupy these units. So I'm interested in some input then from everybody. I mean, as a practical matter, I think a lot of the in-law apartments in town are not occupied by first-degree relatives, but this would make it more friendly. Anybody think that would fly in town? And do you want me to take a stab at trying to draft that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Alice.
Okay, any other category you can think of? And do you want to include friends of, because really that's often who it is. It's just personal friends.
I would be interested to see if there's any similar language at other towns. I took a quick look and I didn't see anything, but it was only a very, very quick look.
Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. Well, we have, before you came in to join us, Christopher, we had a benchmark group of towns that we voted on as 5 towns, local towns. I will look at their provisions. And then I'll look further if I can't find anything. But we'll put on the next agenda to do it. It's worth, what I'm asking everybody is it's worth considering. Do you want to put some more effort into that?
Yeah, excuse me. It does seem like something worth considering. I guess the concern that I have with it is a lot of the categories that we've mentioned, they wouldn't be enforceable on any practical level. So it would almost be a movement towards accessory apartments. That's why I'd be interested to see what other solutions people have come to deal with that issue.
Okay, you know, we do have an accessory apartment. I mean, that's the other approach we could have. If you're, and this is assuming you're interested in, you know, sort of liberalizing these rules a bit, but our accessory apartment provision requires it has to be created from a space which already exists within the structure. And it has to have existed within the structure for at least 5 years. And it has to be integrated so that there's no exterior alterations. It's very, very, very strict. So as a practical matter, I mean, unless you have a big old Victorian house where that's practical, the only way you can add a unit of housing would be through an in-law apartment in town.
Mhm.
So I'll work on it. I'll report back. And we don't have to suggest anything. It's just, again, something that came out of, you know, our obligation as also the Affordable Housing Committee is to look at some of these things. So I try to take some suggestions that can actually be implemented if there were a will. Okay, so are we ready? Oh, the rate. So that's the rate of development and the in-law. So are you ready to jump in and talk about this solar bylaw? This took me hours and hours, guys. This is like not easy to do, and it may be a fool's errand, honestly. But I personally think that our solar bylaw is so open, it could be any side, any size, pretty much any slope. It just is full of holes and should be tightened up. So Francois and I talked to Eric Smith, who drafted the Athol bylaw. So what my goal in just putting something down on paper here was to take the Athol bylaw to pretty much recast it. It's not exactly, when I really got into the nitty gritty of their bylaw, some of it was very poorly written. It was very poorly numbered. And there was a lot of things that didn't apply. Like, for example, their only gravel pit in town, I guess, is owned by the town, and they just wholesale excluded it. So So I'm working on this and I need expert help on it and I need input from everybody because it's not going to be my bylaw, you know, it's going to be our bylaw if we do it. So I'm happy to take anybody's thoughts on it. My thinking is if we decide to go forward on it, it's too long. And we'd have to get Bill involved to help us. But also, I think I would try to have a sort of a questionnaire grid, because when you read this, the things that you need to think about, you could all answer. You can't share information, but we could all answer it and have input. So I would do a list of things like, what do you think the maximum size of the facility should be? What do you think the maximum coverage of the lot should be? The same thing with minimum. What do you think the slope should be? You know, those kind of questions, the things where decisions really need to be made. And I think it helps to know, and I could send this out too, is sort of a rule of thumb is that a 5 megawatt system, which is the maximum allowed under the Athol bylaw, would take about 11.5 acres. But under the Athol bylaw, you would need, it limits it to, you would need a 20-acre site to site that 11.5 acres. And then it's also further complex because the Athol bylaw does not let you just clear cut forests. So if you have to use your disturbed land first, and only half of the site can be put into solar fields with a little bit of a wiggle room, 5 acres to cut more forest in certain circumstances by special, you know, special ruling. So I don't know. I mean, another interesting fact is one megawatt. So we're talking about 5 megawatts being the limit. 1 megawatt power is about 4,000 homes. So part of it is just of trying to deal with this is wrapping your head around the sort of the basics of solar fields. So I guess the question is response. Do you want to try to do this? And I want to hear from Bill too. I told Bill that we would need expert help and ask him what it would cost for him to review it and make, you know, corrections, suggestions, and answer our questions. So I guess the first interest is, do you want to pursue it? Anybody want to weigh in? Did you all get a chance to read it?
Yes, I did, Alice.
Yes. I think it's a great draft, the one you put together. Personally, I think this is it's due for a revision, and you've done this in a great manner. So I would like to continue with this here and participate with you. Clearly, working remotely at this point in time is certainly a challenge, but it is certainly something that makes a lot of sense, and I think we ought to continue working on this here.
I agree with Francois.
Okay, so Bill, what do you think?
So I sent you my original response in that I know that they had a catastrophic incident in Athol with one of their solar fields. And I can see in this bylaw that it's responding substantially to it. I think it's got holes and it needs some streamlining because it goes overboard in some and it doesn't address specifics in others. It's a great framework. Just as a benchmark, everybody should know that the last Borrego one that we just approved and they finalized was what, 5.2 megawatts with a battery.
That's pretty close.
Yeah. So the other part is it's not the Department of Energy, but it's the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs is trying to whittle down on solar fields that require the cutting of woods. And they either have a policy or they're coming out with a policy to say that projects that require the cutting of forest to create a solar field are not on a priority list. And I got to find that in some form or another. The other thing I looked at is slopes. There are very few slopes in Hubbardston that are flat that meet the requirements of this bylaw. So it's too restrictive, in my opinion.
10% is too flat.
Too flat. Yep.
So would you like to work with us to fix this, and how would that? I don't know. I mean, you could say so many hours for X amount. I have no idea. I just know that doing this is like mind-bogglingly tedious.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the vicinity of about 30 hours, 20 to 30 hours. Because you first we go through the research. Like the first thing is before they make an application to the town, they have to prove that the electric company has at least preliminarily granted them, or they've studied the wires and there's capacity in the system. Otherwise, the planning board's going through a process that will never get built. So
Do our present bylaws require that?
they require, yeah, they do.
Okay, so we need to carry that over.
We
Okay,
need to carry it over, right? And a lot of those housekeeping items. But it is it's a good start, because where we are right now is not defined. The good part is it's a special permit, which grants the board extraordinary authority to review. But yeah, I mean, working on the bylaws is not anything that we haven't done for other towns and we're doing right now.
tell me, isn't there an incentive for builders to build in towns which do not require a special permit for everything? That was my understanding there was.
Well, it's easier to build if you don't need a special permit.
I actually thought they got more points or something for putting
No.
it together.
No.
No,
You mean
okay.
solar wise?
Yeah, in the citing, no, not points in terms of your priority lists and stuff, no? Okay. Somebody.
I don't honestly know the answer to that one.
Okay, well, so 20 to 30 hours, and forgive me, but I've forgotten your rate. What's your rate for that kind of work?
120.
So we would need, do the the math for me. 120 times 20,
$2,400
$2,400.
to
Okay.
3,600.
24 to 36?
6. And of course, we would only bill you the time. So if we use less time, we would only bill you for the time.
Okay, I'm gonna, Mally, write that down and see what we have available for in our funds. And then we'll have to decide whether we want to spend it that way.
And of course, the other way you can do it is you can send me on a mission to research, or you can send me on a mission simply to review the bylaw. I'm figuring the 24 to 3,600 includes a lot of research to make sure that we're grounded pretty securely with current regulations, future regulations, and then editing the bylaw to accommodate all those criteria.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that, honestly, that I don't know what Eric Smith did. I know that their bylaw in Athol was created by a committee.
Yeah.
And it reads like it was created by a committee. It's numbered
does.
consistently at, if you're going to have something, to me, it ought to be done right. We do have the option of taking what we have and trying to put more levels of Band-Aids on it. I think the special permit and the certificate to generate and all these were put in there to give more discretion to the board of what they're going to allow or they're not going to allow, which is not my favorite kind of planning. It just isn't. I think it's a nightmare for the developers. And I think it puts these decisions, if you have a well-written bylaw and they comply with it, then it's going to be safe. And otherwise, it leaves people that are lay people just guessing. Did I make the right decision here? Didn't I make the right decision here? So I'd like to do it, but I do not know where our funds stand to do this. This is what we try to do with our administrative fees, is to build up because it's got to come out of our own resources.
Right.
So I will get back to you this week, but is everybody else on the board think it's worth pursuing if we have those funds? Do you want to spend it in that way to tackle one of the tougher bylaws in terms of being out of date? We got a number of them. Any objections? Additional thoughts?
Based upon based upon the feedback from the select board, it sounded like this is something that they expect there to be support from the public from, as long as the public is appropriately educated.
Yeah.
So it's something I'm generally in favor of.
Okay. Bill, we will get back to you with,
Okay,
if we have the money, and also think about your time. You know, we've got other projects coming down the road for you, so
can I ask a favor?
yes.
So the site plan regulations need at least one little tweak added to them. What I want to do is I want the site plan regulations to require that the drainage on all projects comply with the Mass DEP stormwater quality standards, which is what we held the Gardner self-storage to. And any project that files under the Wetlands Protection Act has to adhere to, because our subdivision regulations and our site plan regulations don't reference stormwater design. And this is the state standard. I mean, everybody uses it across the board. And it's a great way to do it because the standard, you reference the standard, we don't have to micromanage it. We simply say you must comply. And 90% of all the engineers in the Commonwealth that are designing sites design to this standard. So it's just going to give us more protection and make this a whole lot cleaner and easier. So it's a little insert, one sentence insert into the site plan regulations. And if we can do that through town meeting, that would be a really good thing.
Send me an email with it, with the language you want and where you
Okay.
think it would fit. And Mallory will put it on our agenda for next time. I do think that getting the people on the last permit, you know, so drainage is so important, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if there's a good way, a professional standard to reference, I'm all for it. Okay, we will do that for you, Bill. Just send it to, or you send it to me, send it to Mallory and she'll put it on the list. That makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, Mallory, have you seen Mr. Loring show up yet?
Yep, he just showed up.
He is? Not? He was supposed to tune in at 7:30.
Yep, he's here.
Okay. So I'm gonna go. We want to, I don't know, because he put his face on, maybe he doesn't want to be seen. But we'll welcome him. So Mr. Loring, he's actually here representing his mother or sister. Anyway, who owns the lot on Comet Pond Road that is the next one up from the Roberts. And the road bisects sort of his lot, if you remember how that plan looked. And is he there? Can he hear me? So I'm giving the right.
He's here.
Mr. Loring, can you say, oh, there he is. Can you say hello to the board here? Can you hear? He's muted.
He's muted.
Yeah. Do you know how to unmute? He's trying.
I don't know how it works on a phone. I don't know if I can unmute him.
I hate to go on with.
No, I think he's unmuted now. There we go.
Are you there? Mr. Loring? We can't hear you. Sign language. Can you hear us? He's talking, but we can't hear you. He's trying to get in. All right, well, Mr. Loring, can you hear us? Yeah, he can hear us. All right. All right. I'm going to speak for you because we cannot hear you. So he has come to us as a result of, okay, so he owns this lot and it's a big lot. I don't know how many acres he has on it, but he's got a family house on it that's been there since the 1950s. So the house is pre-existing both zoning and subdivision. And what he wants to do is tear down that house and build another house that's somewhat bigger. And he wants to not keep the old house, just tear it down and move it out of the zone, the wetlands protection zone, which cuts right through that property, just about 50 feet away from where it is now. So he applied for a building permit, figuring he's tearing down a house. He's only building one house. He doesn't need to do subdivision approval or anything, but the building inspector turned him down and said he could go to the planning board. And I think what Roland was referring to is it fits the situation where it's a pre-existing grandfathered use, which is allowed under 4.9 of our zoning bylaws. You can expand or reconstruct a pre-existing non-conforming use. Up to 50% you can increase the size, and then it has to be through a special permit, and the board has to find that it's no more detrimental to the neighborhood, and it's got to meet existing yard and building and so forth setbacks. So the issue here is not that the house is too big or the lot is too small or it can't meet the sidelines. The only issue is that the frontage is on this way that the town hasn't recognized as a public way. So I think for the way Roland wrote his denial, and suggested actually that Mr. Loring can come to the planning board. I think what he meant is he would have to come under that provision, file a special permit, and then notify the abutters and so on, and then we could find that it met this criteria for grandfathering. So I'm sorry he can't talk to you, but anyway, that's my advice to him. I think it's the right advice. I think it's what Roland was aiming at. What he said, what Roland said in his letter declining to issue the permit was, your request to demolish the existing camp and construct a new single-family home in a different location on 17 North Comet Pond Access Road, gives the idea of the parcel, is being denied. And then he says the lot has no meaningful frontage as recognized by the Hubbardston zoning bylaws, and then cites the two provisions, and as such the lot would be considered non-conforming. And then he says you may seek relief from this decision by applying for a determination from the planning board based on the Hubbardston zoning bylaws. So it's not totally clear for me where he says it's non-conforming, whether he wants us to use that non-conforming standard, or he thinks we're going to do the same thing that we did for the Roberts, which is what Mr. Loring actually asked. He said, well, we made this determination that it was a suitable width and condition to be away for subdivision purposes. But what I said to Mr. Loring was the difference is with the Roberts, if they're going to subdivide their lot, they actually have to do an A&R plan that lays out the road that exists on an engineering A&R plan, which isn't the same problem that Mr. Loring has. He just wants to rebuild a house on his same lot and move it out of the wetland area.
Hi, Alice, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that. My phone had the settings wrong. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I'm here.
Yes. Am I doing a reasonable job of explaining? Could you hear
You're
me?
doing fantastic. Thank you so much for covering for me. Hello, planning board members. Thank you for making time for me tonight. I know you have a busy agenda. This has been a bit of a process so far. I just thought it was straightforward, being a 22-acre lot. It's been a residence since 1954. It's just stood the test of time. We're hoping to rebuild it. And I thought it was beneficial to everybody to get out of the DCR zone and the buffer zone for the conservation. And the footprint is relatively similar. The size is going to be a little bit larger, but not substantially, maybe 15 or 20% off the top of my head, because it's gonna have a second floor loft. But it's a cabin style house similar to what's there, just rebuilding it to today's technology. The house is over 75 years old, so it's served us well. My parents and I have used it, my cousins, my brother and sister and their kids use this and appreciate Comet Pond on a regular basis. We're hoping that you could look favorably on this if we were to formally apply for a special permit. I think with the language in the zoning bylaw, it fits. Do you have any questions for me?
I think yes, who was one to talk? I think, you got to go through the process. We need to see the plans, right? But,
Yes.
I think I'm giving you, I think I'm telling you to take the right path, path that leads to accomplishing your goal. We can't make a decision without seeing it. And we can't make a decision on a special permit without allowing the abutters to weigh in.
Understood. And I have two abutters, the Roberts and the Dr. Alice before me. I can't remember her last name. So I have two abutters and they both know about the project and we've talked about it this summer. Myself with the Roberts, my mom with Alice, and I don't know her last name, Dr. Alice. At the house before me, I can't remember the address.
Okay, well, you have to, it's a process. There's.
Yes, so I'll work with
The
Mallory.
application, and then you have to get a certified abutters list, and Mallory actually sends those letters out.
I
and
will
you
work
have-
with Mallory to do all that and hopefully get on your agenda very soon.
Okay, okay.
I just, I was told to do this informally, I guess, first, and it just took a little bit longer to get everyone on the same page. Because I'm ready to go ahead and do that. And thank you so much for your
Okay,
time today.
just before you leave, Robert, is Roland here with us? He hasn't tuned in. Okay.
I haven't
Okay.
seen him.
Okay, all right. I thought he might drop by our meeting. I will touch base with him too and make sure that I will talk to him and make sure I'm interpreting his letter right.
Okay, that would be great. And I'll follow up with Roland and Mallory tomorrow and get the process rolling. Thank you so much.
Excellent, thank you. Good luck.
Does anyone else have any questions before we go? Or does it sound like this is the right process?
Anybody? We are familiar with walking that road, so anybody see a
Okay.
problem with that? I think the language fits well to what you want to do, so. All right, we'll hear from you soon.
Thanks
you.
very much. I appreciate everyone's time.
Great, thanks.
Have a nice night.
Thank you, same to you.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye, thank you. Okay, new business. I've just, this is sort of relates to what we were saying earlier, is we're all liaisons on two other things. And I don't know whether I reported this on this or not. I don't remember, but I did go to a CPC meeting and so what happens is you get the money approved there and then it has to be voted on, that the CPC recommends it, and then it goes to town meeting and then they vote on it. So the only affordable housing one we have, which the CPC, the other members of the CPC, we all voted to approve, was to contribute $20,000 to the construction of the Habitat House. One of the other proposals was the Open Space Committee. They always have a jump on us. The vast majority of the projects that get done in this town are through open space. And they they're asking for $75,000 to help acquire another 125 acres, I think, of land on Lombard Road, for actually not to acquire it, but to make it a permanently open space protected. And the CPC voted for that as well. And then the library also is coming in with some foundation improvements and some interior improvements. So I'm just reporting to you, those are going to be on the town meeting warrant as well. And hopefully the citizens, since they've already paid the money into the system, will approve all 3 of those projects. So that's just to report. In the correspondence email category is kind of interesting this last period. I did get an email from a guy named Craig Foley, who's interested in developing the big Marinelli gravel pit into housing, in market rate green housing, he said, and he was very enthusiastic. And I sent him our it's not cluster development. I'm trying to think of the actual name of the bylaw, but the higher density, the developments that are allowed. And then I heard nothing back from him, but it is a possibility. I got an email from and spoke to actually the Martinelli sisters that own the pits attorney, who's a guy named Michael Wiggins. And finally, sort of some of the mystery cleared up. He said, I don't know whether Christopher remembers this, but with the gravel pit that we're working on trying to restore, the Marinelli pit is behind it, and it's huge. It's like 120 acres behind our little 12-acre pit. But the only access to the pit is through our 12 acres. So we reached out to them and said, do you want to combine in going in with the study about what can be done with this vast wasteland of gravel pits? And they had declined without explaining why. But I found out from Mr. Wiggins that they actually had entered into some kind of an agreement with a solar field development there. And I guess it's on its last legs. I guess the option period hasn't run out. So he's looking for, I don't know. He asked me, do you think the town would be interested in buying the gravel pit, for example? And I said, I'm quite sure they wouldn't be, but it may be that they'd be willing to work with us at some point in the future. And I did point out to the people studying the pit that they're going to have to deal with this issue of access to that land. And I don't know whether it's written formally in a deed or what the arrangement is, but the only way to that huge pit is through the 12 acres that the town owns. So that's, again, sort of by background. Maybe it'll lead to something definitive, maybe it won't. We got another complaint, which you see on the list, from a butter, and maybe Mallory can tell you a little about it. It seemed like not really a planning board issue to me, but a lot of things get referred to us. So this is a woman that's complaining somebody's trying to develop a lot that's landlocked, and the only way to it is through her land. Do you know whether anybody looked at that?
So as far as I know, the only thing that's come forward is that there's off of Brigham Road, and there's cart road access. And I haven't heard anything on it since that complaint. I know before the complaint came in, there was a perk test done on the property with the intention of just rebuilding the house that was there. They did put in for a zoning determination request with Roland, but I don't think he's had a chance to complete that yet.
Okay, so again, that's something
new.
They're not expecting to hear from us. They got to hear from Roland first. All right. I did, and maybe John can tell us more about this. I got an invitation from Whitney Freiberg, who's the head of the Economic Development Committee, to participate in a Zoom event, which I agreed to do on behalf of the planning board. Do you know anything more about it?
No, sorry, Alice, I don't. I've missed the last couple economic development meetings.
I do.
Okay.
So
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, so I've been talking with Katie on this because she's requested like the Board of Health and the building department and planning to all come forward. So basically it's just going to be an opportunity for the community to come forward and ask questions as far as like permitting process goes, what's allowed, what isn't allowed, how would I do this, how would I do that. So Katie's asking all these questions get into us by the 10th, so we have time to prepare answers. And she's been posing a lot of what if questions to me as well, so that we have like a good chunk of information so that people can kind of get a better idea of how to prepare for asking for a permit or obtaining a permit, or what different entities they have to go to and the order that they have to go to in order to make sure they comply with all of the boards in town.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did talk to Whitney briefly, I guess emailed her, didn't speak to her directly. And she said, well, board participants should also just prepare something to say, you know?
Yeah.
I thought it'd be a good opportunity to pitch our sign bylaw. So that's what I said to her.
Good.
But it's, everybody can participate. So what is the date again? I know it's in my calendar. I don't have it in front of me. Do you know?
I think it was the 25th of March.
I think that's,
I want to say the 25th.
I think that's right. So I'm sure that anybody can anybody can tune in, right?
Yep.
Well, so I don't know how many, I mean, John should come because, you know, you're part of that committee, but you could send out the link to everybody when it's there, that's on our committee, and just say everybody's invited. And that's, unless anybody else has other things you think I should be pitching at this meeting, that's what I'll do, is just limit it to the sign bylaw. Okay. Also, sort of, so that's correspondence. We also got correspondence from, it's in your email, from some people that were really, really upset about I mean, it's in the documents, I think, upset about a illegal kennel. Their name is Dakota, and the address was 55 Old Boston Turnpike, which is in a butter, also a family member. Anyway, so Mallory and I did some research on that, and it's the argument we had gotten was they were violating a special permit, but they never had a special permit. The permit was denied years ago in the 90s. But there is an issue about whether they have a valid license, dog license, to operate a kennel. They had, but it had expired. And just for future reference, you can get a kennel license for a personal kennel, which is up to 4 dogs in town, without having to get a special permit, which I didn't know, but you can read. And apparently the holder of the special permit does not actually have to live on the property where the 4-dog kennel is. At least it's not explicitly written that way. So it's somebody else's bylaw to fix, but just want to tell you about some of the interactions that have gone on. Okay, matters not anticipated by the chair. Just a couple of days ago, we got all the paperwork for, again, a special permit and site plan review for 56 Gardner Road. This was the marijuana shop that was being completely reconfigured. And those documents, they've not been distributed to the board yet, right? Oh, or have they? They
Not
haven't.
yet.
Okay, so next meeting, March 18th, we're going to be doing exactly what we did with Damon Schmidt, and looking over those documents to see whether it's a complete application. It's significantly scaled down also, just like Damon's was, because of the issues on the lot. We got to go through the same process. I've got to go through the same process of getting Bill, who's still there, to create a proposal to give us services. So Bill, can you get that done?
I actually sent you a letter saying that if they come in, I issued a proposal in November of last year.
Yes.
And my letter says that if they come in again, we simply need to restart that proposal as originally issued.
Right.
Oh, okay. I did see you. Okay. Okay, so we have a proposal, and they have to start over paying you, or because I know you put a lot of time into it. So is it?
Yes. So whatever the total value is what of that November proposal is what they should be putting in escrow for the planning board. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That was not, all right. That's now cleared up. So Mallory, remind me of that, and we'll get it out to him tomorrow. Okay. And we'll get those documents out to everybody. We'll start filling it up. Even if we don't have an agenda, we'll start filling up that date so you have a chance to read some of the stuff. I know it's a lot of homework, you know. Okay, what else do I have? Old business. Mallory, I think you can take 147 Williamsville Road off
Okay,
the old business because it has now been completed.
okay.
If you're gonna take notes for next year's annual meeting, you might make a note that that was one thing completed early this year.
Mhm.
The gravel permit, Catastall, this is on here because the special permit, it's a long convoluted story, but we granted this restoration permit. The applicant, one of the applicants, or one of the owners of the property, demanded the original. So which you would not usually give the person, but it was late at night and this was an argument ensuing in a parking lot. And I said, well, you've got to get it recorded, you've got to do these steps. And I'd given his sister already a copy of it. But anyway, he lost it or doesn't have it. And now the lawyer is saying, where is it? But we have a resolution to it, is we do have a copy of it, and he's going to prepare a loss affidavit and record it. So that doesn't solve the problem of when that restoration is going to get done. And they may be back before us asking for an extension of the special permit. This is the project that failed because to go forward due to the lack of, due to the COVID pandemic shutting down most of the production at the plant that produces the short paper fiber product that's used to restore the soil. So anyway, that's why it's on the list. Habitat, affordable housing. I don't have an update on the tax title. Maybe Mallory, we could call Sandy and see if she's heard anything, or whoever is in charge of that title work. Habitat for Humanity, I think that's finally, has that closing finally occurred? Do you know, Mallory?
I haven't been updated on it, Alice.
I don't know. I'll have to put it on for the next meeting. I have to find out. The master plan, I sent in some proposed revisions to the land use chapter because it sort of bothered me that it said the only real available land for development is in the northwest corner of the town. And there wasn't any mention made that about 200 acres of that is old gravel pits, So I wrote, and so those revisions, she has put in something about gravel pits, and it will contain some of the reuse ideas that have been done with other gravel pits in surrounding towns. I thought quite well written. And then there were a few corrections on that. And sort of speaking and circling back about that, with the solar bylaw, one of the things that really, really needs to be considered is whether a requirement would be restoring the soil before you put the solar pit in, which under our gravel permit restoration rules, somebody has to do, restore the land before they sell it to anybody. But I think looking at other solar bylaws in the process of doing this, including Athol, there are towns which allow solar fields to just be put in without restoring the topsoil, just grading it off and putting them in. And maybe that makes sense. I don't know.
Alice,
Yeah.
just a quick point. The very first gravel pit we had was Nexamp, which is the big one off of Pitcherville in one of the abandoned pits. And there's an endangered species down there that the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program told us that species wants bare earth. So there are, and they ultimately left it as unsupported soil for that specific reason. So there are reasons for doing that, and the town has a history of allowing that.
Okay, well, we need to integrate that into our solar bylaw.
Yeah.
And if it isn't permitted under our gravel pit restoration, rules and regulations, then we need to fix that as well. And I think that also personally, that would be a good case for expanding beyond the 5 megawatt facility, right? Because if you've got 120 acres of gravel pit why limit it to 20 acres, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I hate to tackle the solar bylaw, but I think if we do, it might bear some really good fruit in the coming years, both better planning and better opportunities for the solar people as well. Yeah, that's interesting. So it must be a species that lives in sandy soil.
Yeah, I think it was a bird.
Interesting. Okay, one of the, if you read that bylaw also, is to fence or not to fence, and whether to leave the gaps under the fence. There's all kinds of issues. I'll try to develop some sort of a list of issues for the other board members to just think about, as well as, looking at your review and seeing if we can really push this forward. I would like to do that.
The way to do that is pretty straightforward. You have a criteria, but the board can waive it for reasonable cause. So that, we should always say that a fence should allow small animals to get under and by, because that's a good idea. And then if there's a waiver required, like if Natural Heritage shows up and says, no, you need to leave it 8 inches up, or there's an extreme security reason, then the board should have the flexibility in the special permit process to waive certain portions of the regulations for cause. And then we're not setting a precedent, but we've got a standard that everybody can understand.
Yeah, there is a waiver clause that they had put in, which I carried over.
Yep.
But I think that if you have somebody that's really willing to tackle one of the gravel permits, that ought to be a spelled out exception of some sort, because otherwise, somebody looking for it might just miss it. Somebody that wanted to tackle a big pit, if they saw, it's a 20-acre limit and you can only get a waiver, So I don't know, there's a lot of thinking that needs to go in, but.
Yep.
But yeah, great. Okay. I expected it to be much longer because I thought we would be all in the weeds with the 57 Pitcherville Road project, but I'm kind of disappointed that we're not going to be able to move into that due diligence phase, but we've got to do more environmental work. But I'm not going to contradict our experts on the subject. I just think it will not, without going for more CPC money, we're not going to be able to move in that next phase. So it's kind of a setback. Anyway, I do not have more business unless anybody else has any more business.
We just have to introduce David Nixon. Kind of do it.
Oh, I was going to do that right up front. Sorry, Mallory.
No worries.
But they're not here. Nobody's here, right?
No, no one's here. So
okay. So you all know that Ryan is leaving for deployment. Maybe you don't know, but anyway, Mallory's going to fill you in. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Ryan's last official day is tomorrow. His last day in office was today. And they have hired David Nixon, who will be our interim for the next year or so. We anticipate Ryan being back around April of next year. So David is coming from Hadley with 15 years of experience there. And he also did some intern work in another small town. He's going to be working about 20 hours a week. And his main goal is going to be, just to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. He's going to be taking over the budget, town meeting, all that good stuff, doing personnel issues. And he's not here to make any big changes, just to keep us on the same straight and narrow that, Ryan has set out for us. So he's been in office all week this week, and he came in a couple of days last week just to get a feel and an idea. But he is taking over Ryan's email. So if anyone has Ryan's email, you can use that to reach him as well.
Great. From Hadley. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we look forward to meeting him.
Yeah.
Okay. So next meeting is the 18th, right?
Yep.
And the 18th, the big item is going to be Mr. Damon Schmidt's project, but we're also going to review the other application, we hope, for.
Well, Damon's won't be until the 1st of April. The special permit hearing will be the 1st of April.
Oh, that's right. That's the 1st of April, right?
Yeah, so we'll review Bowie's on
Bowie's. Okay, next time. All right. So it's not, that's right. So that's the really important quorum one is actually April 1st.
Yeah.
That's right. All right, so and unless anybody else has anything, I'll accept the motion to adjourn from somebody. Anybody?
Sorry, I was
Everybody
talking on mute. Yes, I will make that motion to adjourn.
else? That was John Demalia, I think.
Yes.
A second from somebody?
It's from
Row second.
seconding the
Okay.
motion.
All right, it's not debatable, so lived all I.
Tiger eye.
Monroe, aye.
All right, we stand adjourned. We'll see you guys on the 18th.